SMCI reports today, so I just thought it would be interesting to compare SMCI today, which is a semi name, versus AMD. I made mention of these in this morning notes. AMD has also just been on fire as well. Both of these up significantly this year. They've both been ripping. And so what I thought was interesting was, first, for SMCI, which is what we have on the fixed strike grid here, I compared the fixed strike vol from Friday last week to today. And you can see it's mainly a shade of red. And what's interesting about that is that over that same time period, you could see that SMCI, it was a weird thing I don't fully understand, but they pre-released earnings almost. So they have earnings today, but they kind of gave this guidance that, hey, we're about to blow it out of the water, I guess. But what you can see is the stock pushed this 450 into 500 area, and it's definitely drifting up. Stock is definitely higher even after that pre-earnings, right? But the fixed strike vol has really come down significantly, as you can see here in the matrix. So the fact that this is all kind of bright shades of red is telling us that options or calls have arguably come for sale as the stock's been moving up over this time frame. And the term structure here that you could see is, the cone obviously is the range of at the money vols. So we're elevated in this zone, but we're not, it's not extreme. And I think it's because they kind of did some pre-release already. And then I was looking at Skew, and this is for February Skew, February OPEX, so about 2 weeks from now. And you can see the current Skew is in green. It's really pretty flat. I mean, this is fixed strike Skew. We're trading right here. If you look at percentage out of the money, clearly there's still a call Skew, meaning call implied vol is still higher than the equivalent of the put, right? The similar downside put. So people still have this bullish tilt going into SMCI, but it's not as much of a massive skew. It's not so overpriced to me as compared to AMD. And so if we just kind of look at AMD, if we do kind of a similar exercise, you can see how much different it is instantaneously, right? AMD has had a huge run. Yeah, it's not up as much as SMCI, but this is the current Feb fixed strike Skew, and there's where we were, right? So expectations for AMD, which I think has a lot more attention on it than SMCI, expectations are just through the roof for AMD at the moment. And, I think they're overdone. And if you look at the vols here, the fixed strike vols, we're up, right? This is all shades of green. So, this is, to me, AMD is overpriced at these, I'm not talking about the price of the stock as much as the vols just suggest that the options market, is overpricing this thing. And so that was something that I thought was super interesting. You can see how high relative to its cone, right, is this AMD term structure. So even though today is the SMCI chip earnings, stocks up massively. Tomorrow's AMD, they kind of run the same business. I don't know much about the respective fundamentals, but you could see what the real, major difference is here. And then I just want to go to Equity Hub. We could take a look at where positions are in AMD. The other thing I like about, seems to be more of a lid on AMD, is there's a clear under the 200 strike here. As you can see, 200 is the last spot that's got any real positions on it, right? So 200 is right here. This gamma curve really flattens out. And historically, we see when this gamma curve flattens out, volatility of the stock, the movement or the pressure of dealer hedging flows start to subside. So yes, that's about, trying to see where it's trading right now. It's still about 10%, stocks at 175, so in this area. So that's still a pretty good 10% range, but there's that clear overhead strike that you go, okay, I could see this line in the sand for AMD that's very clear. When you flip to SMCI, it's not quite as obvious, right? Here's 500, huge strike, but you can still see there's pretty decent size here around 525, 550, 600. So the two names, when you contrast and compare them, present what I would think would be different earnings plays. I think the bar for AMD is very hard to jump over at this point. I think they could have great earnings. I'm sure they're going to have very good earnings from a fundamental perspective, but the stock may be laggy in reaction just because I think, it's all been pulled forward. SMCI doesn't feel as obvious to me what's going to happen. And